On this Saturday night, denials from Iran as new details emerge about the Trump assassination plot.
They're going after him with a sense of revenge.
The bombshell accusation from the U.S. and what may have been the motive.
It seems pretty clear that this plot was more than speculative.
Newcomers not welcome. The refugee claimant who says he was forced onto the streets of Montreal over racial taunts.
It's very hard to live where you're not wanted.
Immortalizing our veterans.
I always felt like I wanted to say thank you.
How one man is using his lens to showcase Canada's vets.
That's a beautiful photo.
And the kitten and the canine.
Some things you have to see with your own eyes to believe it.
The maternal bond between two of the most unlikely companions.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Carolyn Jarvis.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. There are questions emerging on two fronts tonight about what Donald Trump's victory will mean for international peace and stability. One has to do with the future of Ukraine, given Trump's relationship with Vladimir Putin. We'll get to that in a moment. The other unknown is Iran. Tonight, the Iranian regime is fiercely denying accusations from the U.S. that one of its citizens was planning to kill Trump. As Bianca Facchinei reports, an Iranian assassination plot, if true, would only increase tensions between the two rival nations.
The Iranian government denying the Trump assassination plot as a malicious conspiracy. In a statement, Iran's foreign ministry calls the accusation baseless and claims it originated within Zionist and anti-Iranian circles, aimed at further complicating the issues between the U.S. and Iran.
It seems pretty clear that this plot was more than speculative. It was a plan that was being operationalized.
On Friday, the Department of Justice said it prevented a plan to kill President-elect Donald Trump, as well as an American journalist of Iranian origin.
They want to get rid of me. When they want me dead, it means that I'm doing something.
Masih Alinejad says the FBI informed her they arrested two men hired to kill her.
This is what the Islamic Republic want to do, actually. So I want to be more louder.
U.S. authorities say an unnamed official in Iran's Revolutionary Guard told Farhad Shakeri of Iran to kill Trump as retribution for the January 2020 death of Qasem Soleimani. It also says he hired the two men accused of trying to kill Alinejad, Carlisle Rivera and Jonathan Lodholt, both of New York. One expert says the plot demonstrates the depths of Iran's grudge against Trump, who they believed would not win re-election and could therefore be an easier target.
They're going after him with a sense of revenge rather than it being of a strategic significance.
Shakeri immigrated to the U.S. as a child, but was deported around 2008 after serving 14 years in prison for robbery, according to the Justice Department. He remains at large and is believed to reside in Iran. This marks the third plot to assassinate the president-elect, after the first attempt in July and a second attempt in September. Bianca Facchinei, Global News, Washington.
There's a lot of uncertainty in Ukraine over Trump's victory as the war with Russia rages on. An overnight Russian drone strike killed one person and injured 13 others in Odessa, while drones from Ukraine struck a munitions plant in Russian territory. But with Trump's close ties to Putin and his vow to swiftly end the conflict, there are fears Ukraine is about to lose critical support from its biggest ally. Mackenzie Gray reports.
Well, the party was on at Mar-a-Lago. Unease across much of Ukraine after Donald Trump, who's blamed Ukraine for starting the war, won the White House.
It's an honor to be with you. Thank you.
He also routinely references his warm ties with Vladimir Putin, including when he met the Ukrainian president on the campaign trail.
So we have a very good relationship. And I also have a very good relationship, as you know, with President Putin. And I think if we win, I think we're going to get it resolved very quickly.
Putin returning the favor this week, congratulating Trump on his win, with the Kremlin saying they're ready to negotiate an end to the war, something Trump is also eager to do, having promised he could end it within 24 hours, but won't say if he pushed Ukraine to give up territory.
It is up to Ukraine to decide what should and should not be on the agenda for ending this war.
This Ukrainian parliament member taking a less diplomatic approach.
It's kind of a nonsense to invite Putin and have negotiations with him. I can hardly imagine someone, an American president, inviting Hitler during the World War II to discuss something.
Of the NATO alliance.
And Trump isn't the only issue for Ukraine.
I voted against in the Senate the Ukrainian aid package.
Incoming Vice President J.D. Vance was one of the loudest Ukraine critics in the Senate.
I don't think spending another $61 billion of American money actually helps the Ukrainians that much.
And if the new look Congress follows Vance's lead, it would leave the European Union and Canada to likely have to increase aid to Kyiv or see Russia take a decisive edge on the battlefield.
The fight in Ukraine is a fight between democracy and dictatorship, and that the Ukrainians are fighting for us.
In the final weeks of his presidency, Joe Biden will attempt to Trump-proof future aid for Ukraine, Carolyn, with the administration looking to move more than $9 billion in already approved aid over to Kyiv.
Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa, thank you. Trump and President Joe Biden are set to meet this week, and it's expected the war in the Middle East will be a major point of discussion. There was a huge diplomatic push to end the bloodshed, but today, Qatar says it is pausing ongoing peace talks. Qatari officials say the Gulf state, which has been mediating talks alongside the U.S. and Egypt, won't assist until both Israel and Hamas show a serious political willingness to reach a deal. Meanwhile, in Gaza, nowhere is safe. Israeli attacks pummeled the Palestinian territory overnight and again today. According to the Hamas-run health ministry, at least 40 people have been killed during strikes that targeted parts of the north and the south in the past 24 hours, including one which hit the grounds of a hospital sheltering families displaced by war. And the grim humanitarian situation in Gaza is only growing worse. Families are desperate for food. Today, the UN-backed Famine Review Committee warned the situation is extremely grave and rapidly deteriorating. According to its report, civilians are rationing out their last supplies to survive. Under Israel's expanded assault, almost no humanitarian aid has crossed into the Palestinian territory for the past month. In western Pakistan, at least 26 people, including 16 soldiers, are dead after a suicide bombing at a railway station. The bomber detonated the explosives on the platform as passengers, including a group of soldiers, were waiting for their train. At least 60 others were injured. A militant group called the Baluchistan Liberation Army, which is seeking independence from the rest of Pakistan, is claiming responsibility for the attack. To the fallout from those violent attacks on Israeli soccer fans in Amsterdam. Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof says he's ashamed and condemned Thursday night's attacks, while billionaire Bill Ackman says he will move Universal Music Group from Amsterdam's stock exchange to the United States. Amsterdam's mayor says the Israeli team's supporters were attacked, abused, and pelted with fireworks by what she's labeled anti-Semitic hit-and-run squads. The city has banned demonstrations for 3 days and given police emergency stop and search powers. Here in Canada, organizations which serve refugee claimants in Montreal are speaking out, warning of an alarming rise in racism against newcomers. As Phil Carpenter reports, they say rhetoric from political leaders against migrants is making matters worse, particularly for people of color.
Catariga Raymond Calvin's mind is more at ease now that he has a place to stay. He lived in an apartment when he arrived from Uganda just over a year ago. But then problems started.
Literally, my neighbors started bullying me, so I was literally just out of the house.
The refugee claimant says he began getting racial taunts from other tenants because of his skin color and his accent.
Like, you're black, you're not needed in this country. Like, you're a refugee, you're an asylum seeker, you're nothing in this country.
After he left the apartment, he lived on the street for a full month between January and February.
You have nothing to eat. You eat once a day. That's the supper.
People working with asylum seekers in Montreal say since last year, they've been hearing more stories of racist acts.
They give him funny face. Sometimes they could tell him go back in your country.
Jesse Edmond, a social worker who supports Calvin, says since this summer, he's heard similar accounts and worse from his clients.
Some of them went through bad things here.
Edmond remembers one refugee claimant from the DRC who fled Quebec City after being attacked.
I was talking to him. He told me that they almost killed him because he was black, you know.
That was earlier this year. Advocate Franz Andre argues that these racial attacks are so frequent and horrific, they're making even citizens question their place in the province.
And I'm starting to feel that way.
He blames the rise in intolerance on the rhetoric from some political leaders, the ongoing public debate about problems refugee claimants are allegedly causing, and what he sees as scapegoating newcomers for things like the housing crisis.
Yes, there's issues, but they should not be pointing at asylum seekers to be the cause of all the problems in Quebec.
Despite the challenges, Calvin has few regrets about coming to Canada and is grateful for the help he's getting. He's philosophical about the racism he's faced.
You have to just live and move on with life and just accept God to take you where you are.
The 25-year-old is hoping to start university soon. Phil Carpenter, Global News, Montreal.
Talks are underway in Vancouver to try to find a way out of a labor dispute that has shut down cargo traffic at BC ports. The union representing striking workers is holding 3 days of marathon talks with federal mediators. Over 700 port employees have been without a contract since March of last year. Their job action has paralyzed the Port of Vancouver, Canada's largest, for almost a week. A post-mortem on the failed Democratic campaign coming up. Where did the Harris team fall short and why couldn't it connect with voters? Plus, those monkeys on the loose from a lab in South Carolina, well, they've now been spotted. We'll tell you where, straight ahead. The winner has been clear for days, but more results have come in from the U.S. presidential election. Today, the swing state of Nevada was officially called for Trump, marking the 6th presidential battleground win for him. It's also the first time a Republican candidate has won the state since George W. Bush in 2004. With such a landslide win for the Republicans, Democrats are now asking themselves, how did it all go wrong again? Despite issues with the economy and President Biden's unpopularity, Kamala Harris's campaign seemed confident they could turn it around. But in the end, it wasn't enough. Eric Sorensen breaks down why.
Gotta talk to voters.
Was it Harris's race or gender? Was it Trump's attack on immigrants? Or was it the economy, stupid, as the old saying goes? And was that issue locked in long before election night?
Madam Vice President.
In early 2021, President Biden was riding high, his approval well over 50%. But coming out of COVID, inflation spiked to its highest level in 40 years. Prices on appliances, groceries, and gasoline hit record highs.
The prices are getting crazy.
$124, not even full tank.
Biden tried to tame inflation.
I wrote a thing called the Inflation Reduction Act. This year, the American people won.
But for 2 years, the annual inflation rate averaged above 7%. Biden's approval ratings plunged, and then he decided to go for a second term.
That's why I'm running for re-election.
But he remained unpopular, and by the time Biden left the race 14 months later, his low approval was like an anchor for Kamala Harris's campaign.
Frankly, the Harris campaign and even Joe Biden at one point could not outrun inflation.
And Joe Biden's popularity never recovered. History suggests an administration's re-election chances depend a lot on the approval of a sitting president. Ronald Reagan's re-election in 1984, Bill Clinton's in 96, George W. Bush and Barack Obama all had approval ratings around or above 50% just before their re-election victories. Jimmy Carter, on the other hand, at the end of his first term, and George H.W. Bush and Donald Trump in 2020 were all well below that and lost their bids for re-election. At 41%, Biden, it seems, left Kamala Harris with too little time and too much ground to make up.
Yeah, president really needs to be above 40%, mid-40s, high 40s for either him or his successor to do well.
In the election, Harris outperformed Biden's approval ratings, but even some Democratic voters still wanted change.
I feel like I can't vote for the Democrats and what they have done.
These days, the American electorate is so polarized that once you've lost people, it's hard to get them back.
While inflation has come down, prices have not. And voters, it seems, were going to hold Democrats responsible, whether it was Biden or Harris at the top of the ticket. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
Ahead, through the lens, the images that matter most this Remembrance Day. Germans commemorated one of the most pivotal moments in modern history today. It was 35 years ago that the Berlin Wall came down, unifying communist East Germany with its democratic neighbor. The fall of the wall marked the end of the Cold War and the beginning of the end of the Soviet Union. Princess Kate made a rare public appearance in London today. The Princess of Wales and Prince William attended the Festival of Remembrance at Royal Albert Hall. In September, Kate announced she had finished chemotherapy, but said her path to recovery would be long. King Charles was also in attendance, though his wife, Queen Camilla, was not. She stayed at home while recovering from a chest infection. Here at home, a celebrity photographer has switched gears ahead of Remembrance Day in an effort to shine a spotlight on Canadian veterans. Trevor Godino has already photographed dozens of vets with a goal of reaching hundreds more and capturing the stories of Canadians who have served. Ella McDonald reports.
Through the lens, Trevor Godino aims to capture the pride and diversity of Canada's veterans. His project, Honour Country Sacrifice, showcases members of the Canadian Armed Forces from past to present day, with one goal in mind.
I always felt like I wanted to say thank you, but also to make sure these amazing Canadian stories aren't lost.
Godino wanted to serve in the forces himself, but after he didn't pass the medical exam, his hopes were dashed. Instead, he pursued a bachelor's degree in the arts.
Because of that, I started painting, and then I eventually picked up a camera, which my dad gave me, to photograph subjects that I would eventually paint, and eventually I just stopped painting them.
Throughout the years, he's photographed celebrities like Michael Douglas, Jennifer Aniston, Al Pacino. The list goes on.
I spent a lot of my years developing my career, and one of my favorite photographers, Richard Avedon, said I do this so I could do the projects that really mean something to me.
Barry Pitcher served in Afghanistan. Seeing veterans immortalized through Godino's portraiture brings tears to his eyes.
I think when you're before Trevor's lens, you feel as if you represent all veterans for that moment in time.
Our history books don't reflect ourselves anymore. When you see these portraits, you will start seeing people that look like the people that live in this country again.
Trevor has a unique way of capturing the emotion in the eyes and the pride, I find.
Pitcher says people often forget there are still Canadians serving overseas and at home, like Judy Edwards, who served in New Glasgow as a member of the reserves.
It's good to do what you need to do around home, and to bring focus on it, that it doesn't have to be overseas and it doesn't have to be away.
For Godino, sharing stories like Edwards's is what the project is all about.
End result, I want Canadians to be thinking about vets and even active CAF members 365 days of the year rather than on 1 or 2 days a year.
Ella MacDonald, Global News, Bedford, Nova Scotia.
And Donna Friesen will anchor live coverage of this year's National Remembrance Day ceremony in Ottawa, Monday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, 7:30 Pacific here on Global Television, globalnews.ca, and all of our streaming platforms. Next, a puppy and a kitten, each without a pack. How they found each other in the most unlikely way. Some of the missing monkeys who escaped from a research facility in South Carolina earlier this week have now been spotted playing in the woods nearby. 43 primates escaped after a worker left a gate open. Roughly 30 have been seen going back and forth between the facility's fence line and the neighboring property. The remaining 13 are thought to be deeper in the woods, though none have been caught. Officials say they do not carry any contagious viruses, but are warning the public to steer clear. Well, there are some things the laws of nature can't quite explain. How else do you make sense of the story of a dog from Manitoba, who by all accounts shouldn't have survived, and an orphaned kitten who have come together in the most unique way? That dog is now nursing the kitten. As Melissa Ridgen reports, it's a bond that transcends species and convention.
Meet Phoenix the rescue pup and Snickers, her kitten. Despite not having a litter of pups and never being pregnant, 11-month-old Phoenix started producing milk not long after this feral orphaned kitten showed up at Patricia Chanin's property north of Winnipeg.
Some things you have to see with your own eyes to believe it. And yeah,
That is the first time.
She's spent her life training, boarding, and fostering animals and noticed an instant bond between the two.
Snickers started laying on Phoenix's belly and doing the purring and the stamping. And I told my vet tech friend, hey, that's so cute, and it looks like she's nursing.
And Phoenix was. This veterinarian explains how the kitten made it happen.
As long as there was continual stimulation by the teats with suckling, it could stimulate the female dog to produce milk.
Interesting fact, though.
Cats' milk has much higher protein and fat than dogs.
But Snickers gets additional nutrition from cat food. Chanin believes their connection is meant to be. Phoenix was part of a litter of 6 rescued by Manitoba Animal Alliance. All but Phoenix died of the distemper virus. Her road to recovery, though, long and costly.
Your nickname is $1 Million Puppy because we spend all our money on that dog right now.
Her care bill is expected to hit $20,000 when all is said and done. Perhaps this is Phoenix's way of paying it forward, helping another furry friend in his time of need. Melissa Ridgen, Global News, Winnipeg.
And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Carolyn Jarvis. We leave you tonight with scenes from New York City as crowds flock to watch the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree being raised today. This year's tree is a Norway spruce from Massachusetts. The nearly 23-meter giant will soon be wrapped in more than 50,000 light bulbs before the official lighting ceremony on December 4th. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow night. See you then.